Hi everyone, Cameron Tait here. I am actually a classically trained chef. I am also a Cabela's Pro Staff. I'm an Illumicraft Pro Staff. I'm actually just signed on to Outdoor Canada, and we're going to do some really cool food ideas in the magazine. But back to being a chef. I've trained in kitchens for about 30 years, and I tell you, the most important thing is a sharp knife. Doesn't matter if you're in a kitchen, if you're hunting, if you're cleaning birds or game or venison or whatever. The most important tool is just this. You can do anything you want with a really sharp knife. There's nothing more frustrating than having a super dull knife out in the field, and frustrating because you've just harvested this animal. That animal has given its life. You want to respect that, and you want to get the most amount of meat or anything else that you can off of that animal. This is how you're going to do it. I'm going to show you how to have the sharpest knife you've ever had in your life. One of the most important things is to get the proper stones, and these stones here, they're a Japanese water stone. I just buy these at Lee Valley, and these are really great stones, and it's a water stone. And what you do is you just soak them in water, and they're so much better than an oil stone. You wash out the water away from the carbon and the steel and the knife. It's really, really effective. But there's a certain technique that I'm going to show you to make these knives razor sharp. So there's a certain technique that you want to do when you're doing this type of sharpening. So I always have a cutting board with a mat underneath. I don't want my cutting board to slide around, because if this is really stationary, you're not going to make a mistake and cut yourself. I put a damp towel underneath, so your stone here is going to stay stationary as well. I've soaked it for 30 minutes, and I've just got a little bit of water here that I'm going to put on from time to time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with this buck knife here. This is a great knife for hunting. But what you want to do is, the most basic premise to any meat cutting is you're cutting the meat from the bone, and you don't want to leave any meat behind, because that's a waste. So there's a certain way that you're going to be doing this, and some people will say, you go this way, or you can go back and forth like this. I'm going to show you a technique that it's a bit of an art, and if you do it in a certain way, back and forth, and you lock your wrists, I tell you, your knives will never be sharper than this. So what you want to do is put a little bit of water on the stone, have it lubricated. So what I want to do is, a knife this size, I'm only going to be sharpening it in 3 different stages. So I've got this knife here. This is going to be on around a 25-degree angle of an edge. The more aggressive angle, like a 40 or 50, it doesn't make any sense. You want it to cut right through the product and be very smooth. So what I do is I choke up on the knife like this, and I have my index finger, and I put my other index and middle finger on the tip. And essentially all it is a back and forth motion. You're locking your wrists together, and you're standing essentially with your head right over top of the stone, and a good amount of pressure to make sure that you're in contact with the stone at all times, and just back and forth, and you're using the full stone, and you're not just using the one area, because you're going to warp your stone and then it's going to be a waste. So I'll show you how simple this is to do, and here we go. A little bit of water on there. I'm going to start off on the tip. So I choke right up on the knife, and all I'm going to do is go back and forth. It's an even pressure. Once you get the rhythm of it, you can speed up. So what I'm doing at this stage here on this 800 grit stone is I'm forming the blade exactly how I want. So if I don't do it the right at this stage, the right style, the right angle, I'm wasting my time. So this way, I've got around a 22 to 25 degree angle. I'm going back and forth, and I'm going to do it in 3 sections. So I'm going to show you. We're just speeding it up. Essentially, I do about 50 strokes in each section of the knife. You want to make sure that it's even on both sides. So I'm going to go through this section, this section, this section. Then I'm going to flip it over and do the other side. Each stone that you go through, you do the exact same technique, the same angle, the same process, and it'll be a beautiful knife. So here we go. We're going to start on the other side of the knife now. It's a little bit different, so instead of holding my finger like this, what I do is I flip it over and I put my index finger on the blade side. I put my thumb on the back, fingertips on the front. Don't worry about it. If this feels awkward, this is a bit of an art, and it takes many years for you to get it to a point where it is very fluid motion when you're doing this, and to be comfortable. A little bit of water on the stone. There's another really good tip. I always keep my right hand, if you're right-handed, dry. It's not going to slip on your knife. This is your working hand. This is your dry hand. So what I'm going to do is I push down a little bit more into the tip. Everyone's knives are dull on the tip. So what I do is I pull back, and now I get into that tip. Back and forth motion. You always want to have the right amount of water on here. If there's not enough water, if there's no lubricant, and you're going to, you could ruin your knife, because the water is almost like an oil in a car's engine. It's providing that lubricant so it doesn't overheat. So I start off with the tip, and then I find my 25-degree angle, which is right here. Actually, my thumb is part of the gauge. When I touch the stone here on this side here, I know that that is my 25-degree angle. So I'm going to do the center part now. At a certain point, I do flip this around to make sure that it does wear on both sides properly. I'm going to keep going in the middle here. The one trick is you do not move your wrists. Your wrists are locked. I got my gauge of my thumb. The pressure point is on my fingertips on the top of the blade. And just simply back and forth. The tricky part here is on the second side, is I'm going to pull it around over here to get right into the heel. Okay, so now I've got my second side. I'm going to even it out, go back on the first side. Sometimes there's a burr, a little piece of steel that builds up on the one side. All I do is I take my knife and I run it on the back of my cutting board here to get that steel off. So at this stage is really important. You want to see whether you actually have your edge. And holy smokes, this is going to be sharp. So we're going to go on to our next step now. So some people will say, well, what's the big deal with using 3 stones? The first stone is to shape the edge exactly how we want. The second stone, so we start off with an 800. We're going to go to a 1000, and then we're going to go to a 4000. Our 1000 is our middle stone that we're going to be using, and now we're just taking out the scratches. I've got the edge exactly how I want this. It's going to take out the scratches and start buffing it. The last stone that I use is going to be a 4000, and it's going to bring it to a mirrored edge, and it's going to be incredibly sharp, and it's going to look brand new. This is a 50-year-old buck knife, and when we're finished with this, it'll be better than it was 50 years ago. So here we go. We're going to start off on the first side again. I always start off on the right side. It's just by habit. So same thing, finger and then fingertips right on the tip of the knife. So I want to get right in, because a lot of knives, people only sharpen them flat like this. What I do is I get right up into that tip to get that sharpness right up to that point. So that's a bit of the trick. Same thing, back and forth. You start off a little bit slower, and then you build up your speed. Some people will say, well, how do you know what angle to use? Very simple. I'm going to go like this. I'm going to rock the knife until I find that edge. Oh, there's the edge right there that I did before. So now I'm going to do the same thing on the tip, roll it, oh, there's my edge. I could feel it where that bevel is. So now I put my fingertips right over top. I choked up with my knife, back and forth motion like this. Okay, now we're on to the final step. A really simple trick I'm going to tell you is on the last stage here, we've got our finest stone here. If there's one speck of dirt or metal on this one here, you're going to score the stone and you're going to score your knife. What I like to do is take my towel, wipe off, make sure there's no debris, and you just need a little bit of water on this one here. This is a 4,000 grit stone. It's not porous, it's not going to soak up any of the water. So I'm right at the end of doing this knife. You can push quite hard actually on this stone one here. Because it is so smooth, I can push so hard on here to get this at a beautiful, nice polish. I can actually boil and evaporate the water on this stone. It's not necessary, you don't have to do it that hard, but I like to push quite hard to get all those tiny little scratches out. And I'm going to show you, I'm just going to finish off this tip. I'm going to show you how sharp this knife is. So this knife has done many deer, animals, wild game and everything. So 50 years old. I'm going to show you right here. Don't do it around in this area here because this is bad. So look at this. I've literally shaved with this 50-year-old buck knife.